And 3, 2, 1, and we are here. I almost said live, but when people watch this, they're not going to be live. So, what's up, brother?
Not
Bertacuda.
much. Just hanging out at home.
All right. So, oh shit. Welcome to another episode of Decon versus the Dark. I feel like I haven't done that in such a long time. The Decon versus the Dark. I am, of course, your host, Decon, and I am here with my very, very special guest, Mister. Should I call you Bertacuda?
And Birdie. Birdie for short.
Birdie. He's Birdie. Birdie Bert. So, brother, today we have the topic of wrestling conspiracies.
Yes.
So if I were to tell you, like, hey, Birdie, give me the definition of a wrestling conspiracy, what would you say?
Probably the steroid case that I came across back in the 90s.
This is getting hot, so I'm going to take off my jacket because this show is on fire.
So, yeah, the old steroid case that Vince McMahon got caught up in back in the, what was it, the 90s?
Yeah, it was the 90s. And so you hear like a lot of wrestlers, like Jake the Snake talks about how, Vince McMahon would come up to him and be like, hey, Jake the Snake, somebody needs you in locker room 3, and just be sure to go in there and be really get what you need. So, and he's like, all right. So he walks in there, and this doctor comes up with suitcases and then just like boxes of pills and all kinds of shit. They're steroids. And he's like, how many do you want? And he says, how many can I get? As many as you can carry. So Vince McMahon was a guy that, even to this day, well, I don't know what the hell he's doing now. I seen he has that weird pencil mustache, like he's some kind of Cuban drug lord, but he was.
I haven't watched wrestling in years.
He looks creepy. You could tell he had a facelift. Him and Stephanie McMahon, like I saw pictures of them recently, and they've gotten facelifts, and I swear Vince McMahon has gotten so many damn facelifts. I swear his ears touching the back.
I bet. How old is he now? He's got,
I don't know, like 150. I don't know.
Yeah, probably. Oh my God, it reminds me of that one like Family Guy episode where they just like stretch him all the way back, and he's just like hogged. He's got these little things that tie him together, so he looks younger.
Yeah, that's how he's like. Oh, back in the day, I wrestled Abraham Lincoln. Did you know that? Oh, Abraham Lincoln, you should meet my doctor in locker room 3. He's got some stuff that'll help you bulk up. But dude, so that whole thing with the steroid scandal, man, that was crazy because he could have been facing jail time, right?
Lots of jail time. Yeah. If he was considered a pill mill, he was looking at a lot of time.
A lot of those were from out of the country, weren't they? Like, weren't they getting them like from Mexico? And,
yeah, the old Mexico fix. Yep.
Yeah, those dirty countries. but what's crazy is I was looking into those kind of. I looked at a bunch of stuff, to be honest with you. There's like so much conspiracies out there, and I'm gonna break something to a lot of people out there. Wrestling is all an act. It's not real. How many people just spat their drink? What?
No. It's all scripted, but the wrestling moves are real.
Oh yeah. So really quick. So wasn't there like Jesse Ventura, which wanted to form a union, and he was gonna I don't know what the hell was going on, but in the end, didn't Hulk Hogan like end up like helping Vince McMahon like get out of the thing? He ratted out Jesse Ventura about the union, and he helped.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, he wanted to form a union because it was so one-sided or something like that, and Hulk Hogan ratted him out to Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon just gave it the axe as soon as possible. Like, anybody's talking about it, you're out, you're done.
Yeah, he's like nobody's gonna, blah blah blah, like try to form a union here. Jesse Ventura still talks about that. He still talks about how Hulk Hogan betrayed him, and it's funny watching Jesse Ventura because people are like, "Are you sure that it was Hulk Hogan?" He's like, "Where were you? Were you there? Did you know that I'm the governor? Well, I was the governor of Minnesota. Now I live in Baja, California. I live in Baja with 150 stray dogs. I taught them to be Navy SEALs and I feed them tortillas. You know,
I jumped in the ocean and I fought sharks. And then when I beat them up and I put them in the 3 count, after they were dead, I threw them to the whales.
I beat them 1, 2, 3. Where were you? How long can you hold your breath there, Birdie? I can hold mine for 45 minutes. You know? But it's nuts because that wrestling industry, man, it's such a my eyes twitching. Jeez, am I having a stroke? So it's such a backstabbing industry. I mean, everybody was literally stepping on everybody else just to get to the top because that's where the money was being made. Here you have people that, dude, they were wrestling for 90 days straight, and no rest. And then it seemed like the superstars, the people that were making the most money, they got the nicer treatment. They got the first class tickets. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Triple H ran across something about Triple H stopping Kurt Angle's rise to the top for a while. So Kurt Angle was like, he was going fast up the ranks, and then Triple H was just like, no, we're going to put a stop to it.
Yeah, him and the Clique, which was Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Kevin. Did you hear the rumor that a couple of wrestlers, I think Road Warrior Animal was talking about how Shawn Michaels was having like a gay relationship with Vince McMahon, and that's why he got so much. You never heard that?
No.
That's what I heard from all these. Yeah, I said they were talking to me like you were having like, Hulk Hogan. Let me tell you something, brother. Did you know that Shawn Michaels, he was sleeping with Vince McMahon? No, but there were rumors out there that were saying that Vince McMahon was having I see, and again, how much of that is just people that were extremely embittered, with Shawn Michaels because Shawn Michaels was a douchebag,
Or that was a rumor to drum up views, watches.
Oh, like that it was like, well, let me tell you something. That doesn't even sound like Vince McMahon at all. Well, Shawn Michaels broke my heart, so I said, you're gonna be out there and you're gonna be the heartbreak kid because you broke my heart. And man, and it's just so dark. So these are the silly conspiracies. I mean, we have all these. The steroid scandal was a little bit not as silly because he could have done some serious time. But I mean, come on, let them do steroids. Let them go out there and look stupid. Look like
you're not going to stop it. I mean, come on. They're supposed to be big, scary people in the ring. Yeah. That's what wrestling is.
Yes, and if you don't, I don't know. So they have the pill scandal. That was a big one because Stephanie McMahon compared that with 9/11. I don't know if you saw that promo.
How the hell do you connect those two?
I don't know. She showed up with her stupid stretched face. She looked like. Have you ever taken what was that? The super putty. Do you remember that stuff back in the day?
Yeah, silly putty.
Yeah, the silly putty. You put it over a face and then you pull it out and it's like that. She looked like that if you were to later, after you got a face on there, stretched it over your knee. That's what her face looked like. But anyway, the point is that she was out there and it was and she said, somebody tried to destroy my family back in the 90s with the steroid scandal. And just like the family of America, these terrorists try to do the same thing in 9/11. It's like, ooh, somebody is
I hope she didn't throw her back out with trying to reach like that. Jesus.
I hope she did. Damn, Stephanie. But speaking of Stephanie, there was that rumor that her and Macho Man were you all right? What are you doing? Yeah. Oh, that her and Macho Man were having an affair, and she was like 16 or 17. And there's those weird pictures that you could see online where she's like sitting on his lap and then Macho Man, he's like posing and And then that's why Macho Man didn't get inducted into the Hall of Fame until like, what was it, like 2005, like a long time after, he had died, like 2015 or something.
Yeah, it was a huge thing. Well, it was a huge thing, but from what I was reading about it, it was just like it's so bizarre. There's like some kind of miscommunication or something like that. She was like, "Oh, I like Uncle Randy," and the rest of the wrestlers was like, "No, Randy, stay away from her, Randy, stay away from her."
Oh, come on
Eat your Slim Jims over there. Don't go near her. I swear
Why
to
don't
God.
you come over here and bite my Slim Jim? Sit on old Uncle Randy's lap. Oh, yeah. That hurt my lungs. That is crazy. Oh, yeah. This is what we're going to do. It's crazy because then, like, when you, there may be no basis in that rumor, but when you start thinking about it, I guess it is kind of weird that around the same time that these pictures came out and the way that Stephanie would talk about, about Randy Savage and, other wrestlers would say that she would like hang on him, and it wasn't like she was a tiny little kid. She was still a kid because she was, a teenager, but still like old enough for like, yeah, you should know better. And then around that time, like Macho Man leaves or gets shit canned, whatever the hell happens, and then you couldn't mention his name around Vince, and then.
Oh yeah. That he got that Slim Jim offer, and then he went to WCW, and Vince tried to keep him around for the money from the Slim Jim thing, but he already bounced. So Vince was pissed. That's a lot of money.
Oh, those commercials were the best because there was, man, maybe I have like a false memory when it comes to this kind of stuff, but I remember there was a commercial where they're at a wrestling event and this old lady, she's like, "You stink, Savage." And he's like, "What'd you say, lady?" And he like snaps into a Slim Jim and he picks her up like over his head and he's like spinning her around. And it's like, man, like, could you imagine doing a commercial now where you're beating up the elderly?
No, I kind of remember that, but I kind of don't. It sounds familiar. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, she was like, "What'd you say, lady?" And he like gets in her face. I'm like, dude, if they did that now, I would watch a lot more TV. I think that we need to sometimes beat up the elderly.
90s commercials were wild, man. They were out there.
they were the best, dude. And what is that? Damn. And there was some conspiracies too with John Cena. And they were also saying that John Cena looks like Ernest. Like as he gets older, he's beginning to look like Ernest. I tried to look into that, but I just couldn't see him.
Look like Ernest, like from Ernest Scared Stupid type thing.
Yeah. Like I try to.
No.
Well, I thought I was like, dude, is Ernest? Is he getting younger? And it's like, no, I think that's John Cena. I think. But there was also like. Getting back to the topic, dude, there was also like dark rumors when it came to. See, there's so many. Okay, so we can get to the dark stuff. So one of the dark rumors was that, for those of you not familiar, do you have the story of the Chris Benoit, like what happened with his family?
No, I don't have that one.
Okay, doesn't matter. I'm gonna go off the memory, and it's probably completely off, and it's much better that way, anyways. So. Chris Benoit, I guess, was supposed to appear at an event at some kind of my face is so stupid. Anyways, he's supposed to appear like at some kind of special main event of some kind. He doesn't show up. He texts Chavo Guerrero, and he tells Chavo like because Eddie Guerrero was like really good friends with Chris Benoit, and before Chris Benoit died. Eddie Guerrero ended up dying. And I guess that Chris Benoit didn't take it very well. I mean, it got to the point where Chris Benoit would go to Vicky Guerrero, which was Eddie Guerrero's wife, his widow, over to her house. And he would go to the restroom. He's like, I got to go to the restroom, and he would go. And she would go into the room, and he was like smelling Eddie's pillow and crying, Like, so I guess that he didn't take that very well. So, like, obviously, it was his best friend. He would cry and he'd curl up into a ball in his bed and like can you imagine you know, like a grown man that is like not family, just smelling your pillow and curling up in your blankets.
I don't know, man. That sounds like some serious head injury or something like that. And
Dude, that sounds like what Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon were accused of being.
yeah, it's just they get those head injuries because that reminds me of you heard of the Billy Jack conspiracy? It's kind of the same thing. It's he was a wrestler big time and he disappeared in April of 2020. Nobody knew where he went, but he was implicated in well, he wasn't implicated, but he kind of said that he was involved in a murder of the Kevin Ives and oh, I can't write. And Don somebody, 16, they call him the Boys on the Tracks case. He said he was involved in that. And then he implicated Bill Clinton. And
I heard of that.
of course,
Of course, Bill Clinton's involved. Wasn't there like a was there a phone call or something that was played? Somehow it linked into Bill Clinton.
I don't know. Yeah, that sounds about right. And then his last nobody knew where he went for a while. And he put out a tweet that said, please stay safe, healthy, and love each other, something to that effect. And then nobody heard from him again. So he just up and disappeared.
Damn, Bill Clinton was probably like on his porch just waiting for these boys. Like, where's that pot they promised me? I was supposed to have a ounce of pot and some cocaine by 6 o'clock, and they're not.
Big Mac attack! Woo!
Oh, ooh, 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 and then Hillary Clinton's in the background just.
Demon hissing at everybody else.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what the hell's going on? Oh, that's the Clintons' house. Oh, okay. But damn. So, anyways, so back to the Chris Benoit thing. So that there was a couple of things that were really weird that I found with that case, because one of the things was that when Chris Benoit, when he died, it took them, I think it was a couple of days for them to figure out it was a murder suicide. They thought that he just died, you know. So when he died, you know, WWE, they did a tribute to like Chris Benoit, like, and all the wrestlers came in. They did the thing where it's like, we need a moment of silence, a 10 seconds moment of silence, and everybody like bows their head really quick. I always want to be that guy to where they're like, we're gonna have a 10-second moment of silence, and then everybody bows their head, and like right when the 3 seconds are almost up, I go ah, like really loud as everybody's quiet. But anyway, so they did the whole moment. It's like, damn, Birdie. So, it's like this whole moment. So they did this whole moment of silence, whatever. So then that later that day after the show, if you were to go to the Wikipedia of Chris Benoit, it actually says murder suicide. Like before it was announced, like later it came out a couple of days later that it was a murder suicide. And then Vince McMahon and they decided to take the decision to like erase him from like the history of wrestling, you know, like anything Chris Benoit, get rid of it, send it to the shredder, you know. So, but it's just so crazy that day before anyone knew anything, and this, I guess that this person, that posted that Wikipedia thing was from Connecticut, where like Vince McMahon is from, you know, and like where he's residing. So it's just like so weird that somebody would know something like that. Either that, or it's like a ridiculous coincidence that somebody were to say something like that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. That's fast. That's like almost insider information that all of a sudden they just like murder suicide like that fast,
Yeah.
And nobody, you know, like,
yeah, not even the coroners, you know, were, you know what I mean? It's like it's so odd, and there is a conspiracy with a couple of things. Okay, so I'm all over the place. So when Chris Benoit no-showed and he said, "Hey, you know, he said this to Chavo Guerrero, by the way, you know, who's Eddie Guerrero's nephew, who was also a wrestler. He sent him a message, you know, saying something like, "Hey, I love you, you know, I'm always thinking about you, you know, blah blah blah, whatever the hell it was." And then there was a phone call basically telling him that he loved. Can you imagine if Chavo Guerrero didn't know what was going on? He's like, hey, enough with that gay shit. You know, like there's already rumors about Shawn Michaels. You know, you know, but so this is what's crazy. So there was the text message with Chavo Guerrero from Chris Benoit's phone, and then he talked about the conversation. Now, there might be interviews about this. I just read it, but there might be interviews where he talks about how when it sounded kind of muffled, almost to the point where it wasn't like Chris Benoit's voice. It was kind of muffled, but you can hear like a scuffle going on in the background, and then the phone just hangs up.
Oh
So
God.
yeah, so that yeah, I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, that almost sounds like a Billy Jack type scenario. It's just like, oh yeah. Oh, I love you. I'm gonna miss everybody. And you're like, what the fuck is going? I better call him. And you're like, hello, and he's like, and they're like, oh, everything's okay. Everything's okay. Don't worry about nothing. And you're like hearing people throwing dishes and shit in the background. You're like, okay, send the cops.
It becomes a John Woo film in the background. Yeah. Dude, so damn it, dude, that was good.
Somebody with a handkerchief with like this going, oh, everything's okay, okay. You don't have to come over. And meanwhile, there's a bunch of fights going on in the background. Someone's
you hear
pile drive through a bed.
Yeah, there's like, imagine if you hang up that call and you're like, oh, that was bizarre, and just hang up and do nothing about it. You know,
and
but
then a day later, and then you get the call like, this dude's dead. And you're like, I just talked to him.
What are you talking about? I just had a conversation with him. He sounded kind of muffled, but it was almost like the same thing that Chavo said. Only Chavo said it kind of sounded like him, but not really. But there was a scuffle going on in the background. So, I guess that one of the conspiracy is that Kevin Sullivan, which was a wrestler, look up Kevin Sullivan, Legion of Doom for you people. That was like the worst moment in WCW history. Anyways, Kevin Sullivan was married to, he's the ex-husband of Chris Benoit's wife. So when they were into wrestling and they had a storyline going, Chris Benoit was actually having an affair with this woman. You know, that was Kevin Sullivan's wife. And then eventually so Chris Benoit was married to this woman, to a different woman, and Kevin Sullivan had his wife. So Chris Benoit sleeping with that other guy's wife. Chris Benoit's wife leaves him. This woman leaves. I think that was actually her name was Woman. That was her wrestling name was Woman. So she leaves Kevin Sullivan for Chris Benoit. So I guess that for years, Kevin Sullivan was saying shit like, I'm going to kill Chris Benoit one day. You know, he stole my wife. I'm going to kill him, and all kinds of different stuff. So when it came out that, you know, and I don't know how true this statement is, but when they say that when Chris Benoit died, that Kevin Sullivan was like, good, he had it coming, or whatever the hell he said, you know. So could you imagine if Kevin Sullivan actually broke into Chris Benoit's house, killed his wife, killed his son, you know, and killed Chris Benoit, and then made it, you know, just like made it seem like a murder suicide? Because again, Chris Benoit have been, you know, he has a CTE from how many head injuries, and he's already had like violent outbursts like in front of people, like it. So I guess that if he were to do something like that, people wouldn't look that much into it. It's like, oh yeah, he's a psycho. But could you imagine if JR and the King were present while Kevin Sullivan was doing all this, and there's like, by God, somebody better stop him. You know, like, oh God, what's going on?
An announcer's table in the kitchen, Butcher.
Yeah, Butcher like thrown again. You know, there's a scuffle between Chris Benoit. He's fighting for his life, and then JR's like, "Bah, he's broken in half. If only somebody were to run in and stop this." You know, you son of a bitch, you're gonna burn in hell. You know, and dude, that's just my dumb. But that's the conspiracy, and then it's so like for those of you that haven't looked that much into it, because it's like, yeah, it was a murder suicide at the end. But if you start looking into it and you look at the history that Chris Benoit had with Kevin Sullivan, it was like a very much like, I guess one of the stories is that in WCW, Kevin Sullivan, I guess, brought a gun to the state and was going to shoot and kill Chris Benoit.
it's a perfect setup. He's already injured. He's got brain problems going on, violent outbursts, stuff like that. All you have to do is just walk in there, do what you have to do, and then leave. And
Hit him.
everybody's going to be like, "Oh, well, he did it because he has brain injury. He's got violent outbursts. Blah blah blah."
He hits Chris Benoit with a chair shot, and Chris Benoit's just laying there passed out, and then he like stages the whole murder, because he's out there with a chair. There's no rep to stop.
Yeah, you could just walk in and just completely destroy their lives, and then walk out, and nobody would say a damn thing.
Yeah, dude, it's so. And for those of you that think that murdering some, like in the murder in the wrestling world is far fetched, there was people in the wrestling business that actually murdered somebody else in the wrestling business. One of the what is that show? There's a show on Tubi. Oh man, before I forget, hey guys, this episode has been brought to you by TacticonArmament.com. You guys want to get your laser sights? You guys want to get all kinds of good stuff? Head on over to Tacticon.com. Anyways, so what? So you know who Bruiser Brody is?
Bruiser Brody, yeah, I kind of know about him.
Okay, so Bruiser Brody was like this wild man in the ring. He worked stiff. For those of you who don't know what working stiff is, he would actually hit you. It was either because he was inexperienced or he was just a douche. He wanted to teach you a lesson. He would actually clip you, like actually punch. So this guy was feared in the ring because number one, he's crazy. He had the big beard, he had the wild crazy hair, and he was nuts, and a lot of wrestlers were actually afraid of him. So there's a story. Well, okay, so we have two versions of this story. We have the Hulk Hogan version, which, for those of you that don't know, Hulk Hogan tells a lot of lies. Like stuff that either his brain, like he's either taking too many slams, or like he's making stuff up because he forgets that the internet exists. Like through Hulk Hogan logic, he says, and then, brother, let me tell you one thing, brother. Let me tell you something, dude. I picked up that giant and I slammed him. 3 days later, the giant was dead. And he tells that story as if, I was like, I was the first one to ever pick up the giant and slam him, which is not true. I mean, you have tons of footage of other people slamming out, which is one thing. I'd be like, okay, he might have been mistaken, blah, blah, blah. But for him to say that he slammed Andre, geez, they should add that to the conspiracy. He killed Andre the Giant with a slam and a leg drop.
Yeah. But never know.
Jeez, especially a leg drop from Hulk Hogan. Can you imagine?
Yeah, you never know. I mean, Andre the Giant was a big dude, but he wasn't invincible. I mean, big dudes are brittle.
Well, it's a good thing that I'm short. So you hear that, people? I am invincible.
Short people are invincible. Okay, got it.
Okay, there you go. It should have one of those things where, like, the more you know. Ding, ding, ding. So, anyways, Brody Stevens got into an argument. I think it was in Puerto Rico that they said this happened. So,
yeah, overseas. Yep, I remember this one now.
Do you have that?
No, I don't have that.
Okay, all right. It doesn't matter. We're going off of memory here. It's much more fun. So, Brody Stevens got into an argument with another wrestler, and I guess they were shouting, and then eventually they were screaming, and a wrestler runs into the locker room and sees this. Damn, I wish I remembered his name. But he was it wasn't Carlito's dad. Who the hell? But anyways, so they walk over, they see Bruiser Brody. He's grabbing his stomach and he starts to collapse on the floor. This guy's standing over him with a knife. This guy apparently stabbed him several times in the stomach. They're in Puerto Rico, by the way. So they call the ambulance. The ambulance, it takes them an hour to get there. By the time they're there, Brody's dead. And this was an argument, I guess, over a match. Like, that's not how the match is supposed to finish, blah, blah, blah. They were arguing like over a match, and one guy stabbed another one. If you listen to Hulk Hogan's story, Hulk Hogan claims to be there. He says, I was right there, brother. There I was. So what happened was, and he tells a story that they got into an argument, and this guy slit Brody Stevens, slit his throat, Bruiser Brody just came in and just why did I say Brody Stevens? Brody Stevens is a comedian. Bruiser Brody came in, just slit his throats, and then he just like grasped, and then he was dead. So the idea, the point I'm trying to make here is the idea is that for a murder to occur in the wrestling business and people to think that it's stupid, it's not, because it's happened. I mean, could you imagine the sport where, and like you said earlier in the show, you have people that, I mean, the whole thing is scripted, but when somebody drops you on your head, there's people have gotten paralyzed.
Yeah. People have died in wrestling, quite a few people. And probably a lot of people that we don't even know about. I mean, from way back before WWE. I mean, back then they didn't have the specialized ring. It was just
plywood
a ring. Yeah.
Yeah. It was plywood, and they would put a canvas over it, and then people would, they would have strong men, and when wrestling first started, I believe they say that it started in the 1830s, and it was usually circus strongmen that would come into town and they would challenge somebody from the audience, and it was legitimately, if I can pin you, just like it is now, only there's no signature move. They would pick people up and drop them on their back, and then the person would be writhing around, and then they would pin them, and then that's what it was. So eventually they started placing bets, and then when gambling got involved, this is where it became scripted. You had like this giant guy from the circus, and they're like, place your bets, who's gonna win? And you watch this guy already beat up all these little farmers and these miners, coal miners from all these towns, and you see this scrawny guy step into the ring, and they're like, place your bets, and everybody's betting on this giant guy who they just watched last week, beat up all these people, and then the giant guy gets beat, and people are like, what is going on? And there's where the scripting of wrestling began. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that when you have a sport where you're taking, they call them bumps, when you're being dropped and you're falling down, you're being thrown in the shit, people actually get concussions, during matches all the time. When you have a lifestyle that way, where you're getting injured all the time, you're working injured, you're going on tour, on your wrestling tour for 70 days straight without rest. Now they fly and they have all these comfort seating. Back then, I mean, I'm not saying that mergers don't occur now, but back then you were on a bus, you were in a car. The Undertaker tells stories how, he would ride in this little car with Paul Bearer. Of course, Paul Bearer.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, could you imagine riding in a little car, first of all, with the Undertaker, who's humongous, and then Paul Bearer, who's also humongous the other way, just wide, and you're in a little car, and you're supposed to drive from town to town without getting a break. Like, that's got to do something to you psychologically.
Yeah. Well, getting your brain sloshed around for, 90 days at a time, maybe 2 times a night, and then stuffed in a car, and then drove 1,500 miles, 500, 1,500 miles a day, every day. Yeah. With some dude that you might not like.
Yeah.
But you're stuck with them.
Yep. A lot of the times it was somebody who last minute missed their bus, missed their ride, and then Vince McMahon's like, well, you're going to have to take them with you. And it's a guy that you hate, and he's riding now in the car with you for days. And could you imagine that awkward silence?
Oh, God. Yeah. Days.
Oh, the arguing.
Yeah. Oh, my God. And you didn't have like
earbuds.
You could share. You had a radio, and whatever was on was probably the driver's choice. And if you're stuck with them, because I'm a metalhead, and if you put on country, it's going to be torture for anywhere from 6, 8, 12-hour drive. Just, I've done it before. It's awful. I don't recommend it, but
I didn't know you were a metalhead.
Oh yeah. Well, I listen to a lot of stuff, but I like heavy metal the best.
Like Metallica and all that fun stuff.
Metallica, Megadeth, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't like the country, so.
Oh, I like country now, and it's just when you're a kid, you were force fed that. Yeah, mom's music was classic country back in the day.
It's like, there I was, and I was riding my flag while I'm cleaning my truck with my hunting dog.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And you're like, I heard this song 3 times.
Conway Twitty, the Oak Ridge Boys, Reba McEntire, the Judds, all them. Oh yeah, being stuffed in a car for 12 hours in the summertime, going through Death Valley to get to California.
Death Valley.
Don't recommend it.
You were going to Death Valley. What were you doing in Death Valley? Were you visiting?
You had to go around Death Valley to get to Reno.
Oh, okay, good. Did you ever meet the Undertaker? You know he's from there, according to his.
No, probably not.
Probably at the gas station, just like, if the gas prices keep going up, I'm gonna tell you, Joe Biden, you will rest in peace. And then you had, Paul Bear buying snacks. Oh yes, Undertaker, Joe Biden, you better be ready.
Can you imagine going into a gas station and you get a soda and a bag of chips and you walk outside and all of a sudden everything gets dark and you hear that dong, and you're like, the hell is that? And you turn around, there's
the Undertaker,
tall Undertaker standing behind you, and you'd be like, what'd I do?
Oh no!
Next thing you know is you get tombstoned in the parking lot.
Yeah, it's hell in a cell. You're like, not again.
I just did that last Tuesday.
No, man, this was even worse than what happened last Tuesday. Dude, you stole my joke. But and that's what's nuts is that these people, they lived the gimmick. I mean, damn, there was a great story. I mean, and I'm saying that they lived the gimmick because that's the way it was. I mean, you couldn't have two sworn enemies, hanging out. Even if they were friends, they had to be seen separate. They had to, do all these kind of things. Imagine the amount of stress, especially if you're the Undertaker. The Undertaker had an interview where he was saying that when he would go into a restaurant, he would wear all black and he would say very few words. If not, Percy Crinkle was the name of Paul Bear.
That's
Percy
right,
would.
Yeah.
Percy would order for him, like, oh, he will have the steak. Oh, yeah. And he's got to sit there with a straight face and not talk to anyone.
Yeah, you gotta keep up the persona because it's under contract with WWE that's who you are from now on. You can't just be Decon. You have to be Decon.
I walk in there and I'm just like, hey, everybody, welcome to another episode. They're like, what are you doing? This is a library. But yeah, you had to live that persona. What if this is my persona? And, what if this is my character and I'm not really like this? Anyways, so, yeah, so just the added stress of keeping kayfabe. Bret, I think it was Will Sasso, told this story about Bret Hart, how they were going to do some kind of program together. Like they were going to wrestle on TV, Will Sasso, the comedian, versus Bret Hart, the actual wrestler. And he's like, hey, I'm going to go to this bar and I'm going to drink for a little bit. Do you want to go to this bar too? And he goes, yeah, I would love to go to the bar. So he says they're getting out of the car and he's like, what are you doing? He's like, we're going to he's like, no, I'm going to get out. I'm going to go in 20 minutes later. You come in, but we don't sit anywhere near each other. He says, but what are my friends? He's like, I don't give a shit what you think that everybody thinks. I care about what everybody thinks is actually going on. And he's like, what? And he goes, yeah, so I'm going to invite you to a drink. I'm going to give you some money so you can buy yourself a drink. This is me buying you a drink. You sit on the other end of the bar and you be scared of me. So he's like, and it was so,
why? That's such a dick move, but God, you gotta keep up appearances. That's the thing. That's the brand. You got to keep up with the brand, otherwise.
Yeah, and dude, there was a great story of do you remember Hacksaw Jim Duggan? He used to come out with a 2x4. He was swinging the 2x4 and he'd hit everybody with a damn 2x4. So there was so him and the Iron Sheik were feuding. They were they were the big rivalry. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, a huge patriot, come out with a flag, come out with a 2x4, and it was 4th of July whenever the hell he was around. So you have Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and here you have the Iron Sheik, which was this like pro-Iran, anti-American, everything. But in real life, they were really good friends. So one day they were partying really hard. And for those of you that partying and you're a wrestler in the 80s involves a lot of cocaine. So
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of booze and a lot of pills.
a
So
lot of booze, a lot of pills. That sounds worse than what happened last Tuesday. Anyway, so they were driving together to go party, and they get pulled over by the police. They find the coke. They find the booze. They're both hammered. They both get thrown in jail. It comes out in the newspaper that these two wrestlers were arrested for drug and alcohol, driving while intoxicated. Vince McMahon Sr. threatens to fire them, not because they were drinking and driving, not because they were doing drugs, but because they were seen together, and they were, and then they had to make up a story of what happened, what happened, and then the story goes that Hacksaw Jim Duggan knocked out the Iron Sheik, threw him in the car, and was gonna frame him to get him put in federal prison, and then everybody's like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. Why?
Yeah. No, it's not just two dudes that went out and partied together and got busted. No, they got to make some kind of like weird story. Scenario.
Yeah, and there was also a famous story where we got away from conspiracies because this is just so fun. So there was a famous story where they walk into a bar, hoping that they don't get recognized. So they're sitting there and they're drinking together, and somebody recognizes them, and they're like, "Hey, it's Duggan." Like, "Hey, Hacksaw, what's up, Hacksaw?" And starts talking to him, and then he's like, "Oh, how you doing?" And he's like, "That's the Iron Sheik." And then once they realized that they were made, like, "Oh man, they know who we are." They immediately started throwing punches at each other, like, "What, Iron Sheik? I didn't know that's who you were." And they start like actually hitting each other in the bar just to keep the roost going.
Yeah, yeah. That can be a whole conspiracy thing on itself. Is just like keep the brand going. Just don't let people know that you're friends with another wrestler, even though you're supposed to hate them.
Yeah, dude, but that sounds like so much more fun. Like I miss that. Like nowadays they have the Twitter where you're tweeting at people, and now whenever something happens, people know immediately, and they're
yeah. As soon as it happens, it's on the web, so forget it.
So you can't do those fun things anymore. I mean, I miss the days before there were cell phones and you could hit somebody with a chair or a stick, and it took like 50 for the cops to get there. Nobody recorded there to take a picture of your license plate.
Yeah, you could do some wild shit back in the 80s and get away with it for sure, but not nowadays. No, as soon as you like decide to, I don't know, tackle somebody in the store and jump off the top of the shelf in the convenience store and give them an atomic elbow, it's right there on social media 5 seconds later.
They're like, "Oh, guess who I saw giving an atomic elbow to old man Lawrence?" Who was it? It was Brody. And Brody,
he had it coming.
Yeah, well, yeah, he had it coming. We're sworn enemies, don't you know? And what's another? What's another conspiracy that was pretty big? Oh, Jimmy Superfly.
Yep, Jimmy Superfly. Yeah, that was another one. His apparently his wife at the time suffered some kind of head trauma, and cops were called. They showed up. She passed during this whole event, and all of a sudden Vince McMahon shows up with a briefcase full of cash.
Yep, with a briefcase. Yep.
And then, of course, Jimmy forgets how to speak English to the cops.
Yep. And he forgets where he is. He forgets, they're like, "Aren't you Jimmy Superfly?" And he's like,
"Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I don't know. Yeah, what?" I mean, maybe it was like onset traumatic head injury, and he just had a glitch, and he's just like, "I don't know who you are."
Maybe she tried to take his title. What if she tried to take his title?
Yeah, could you imagine? He's like, "I'm gonna take your title." He's like, "No, you ain't."
He's sleeping, and she tries to pin him 1, 2, 3, and then he killed her. That's not funny.
He wakes up one day and she's got the belt on. She's like, "Oh yeah,
yeah,
tonight, yeah."
Dude, that's a pretty good Macho Man. Dude, you're making it sound like Jimmy Snuka's. Like it was the conspiracy was that Macho Man was dressed in drag to seduce Jimmy. He's like, ooh, this is the plan I have. Listen to
yeah,
this.
Jimmy, we're gonna get on tonight. I'm gonna take your belt.
He's telling Miss Elizabeth, come here, Elizabeth, I got a plan. I'm gonna seduce and marry Jimmy. Mary, you gotta. What was that scene from Mrs. Doubtfire with Robin Williams? Is like, can you make me into a woman? I like to imagine, Macho Man walking up to those two guys, like, oh, can you make me into a woman? And yeah. And that was his plan on taking the title.
But I don't know, man. I wouldn't put it past Randy for that. That might work, actually.
Well, yeah. Have you heard the story of Macho Man and Jake the Snake when they were going to wrestle? Jake told this story about how they were going to wrestle, and with Jake, with his Jake Roberts, his snakes were not defanged. They actually had the venom glands taken out, and they replaced them with silicone because a venomous snake will actually regrow them, the venom sacs. So they do surgery on all the snakes. So they still have teeth. So for those of you who think they're defanged, like they weren't. His cobras had teeth. His python had teeth. And so then they're supposed to wrestle, right? They're going to wrestle for the Intercontinental Championship. And then Macho Man comes up to Jake, and he was like, tonight we're going to wrestle for this title. Can I ask you a question? And he's like, yeah, what's up? And then he's like, your snake, has it or hasn't it been fixed? He says, fixed? What are you talking about? Poison. And he's like, oh, yeah, it doesn't have its venom glands. He says, if we're going to do this snake has to bite you now. And he says, what? What are you talking about? Oh, I can see it now. He says, how did he put it? He says, a macho man bit by the snake dies. Jake's the champ. And then he's like, so then he has him basically, he wants Jake to be bit by the snake. And then he's like, don't take no pills, don't take no anti-venom. I want to see that poison go through your body. So he says he allows the snake to bite him. He bites him in the leg, and then they wait 10 minutes, and he's like, I guess you're going to be okay. Oh, yeah. Can you dig it? Let's go. And then he goes, because he was paranoid that day. So there's footage where a snake, so he said, the way that Jake put it, he was like, oh, you just wait. So they're in the ring, they're wrestling. He gets Randy tied up on the ropes. So he says, so I took this cobra, and he says, I start paintbrushing this cobra, and now this cobra has his mouth open. He's ready to bite anything, and I throw it on Macho Man, and it bites down. He said that it bites down on his arm, and you can actually go on YouTube and watch this. So he bites down on his arm, and you watch blood squirt everywhere. And he says that he pulled him off, and he says, and I was so pissed off, I threw him back on there. So I went and bit him in the bicep again. But I mean, this is the kind of craziness that was going on back then. I mean, geez, can you imagine you're a wrestler, there's a gimmick where a guy has a cobra, and you have to worry that this guy's going to kill you and take your title?
Yeah. And could you imagine them not informing you that the snakes haven't been fixed? So you're like, I'm dealing with a dangerous animal.
Yeah.
And you get tied up in the ropes, and here comes the cobra, and you're like, oh, I guess I died today, whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, and there was rumors of it even back then. I mean, wrestlers, especially cocaine-filled wrestlers and booze and pills.
It had to be a party scene all the time and intense all the time. You can't drop character all the time. You have to rep the brand all the time. That is just stress.
Yeah, it's not just it is stress, and it's like, what am I doing? At some point, you gotta understand. Like, if you're what was Shawn Michaels' partner before he went to WWE? Jannetty, Marty Jannetty. They were the Rock and Rollers. Shawn Michaels got skyrocketed probably because he was sleeping with Vince McMahon. He got rocketed to stardom, and then Marty Jannetty was just left behind. And you got to imagine, if you're this guy and you're going through these regiments and you're not resting, you got to keep your gimmick up, and then in the end, you're realizing that they're going to fire you pretty soon because no one likes you. Can you imagine the kind of stress that puts on you?
Yeah. And once you're done, you're done. Unless you can get hooked up with another company. Yeah, even if like ECW or AEW, they don't pick you up, you're done. It's finished. It's over.
Yeah, your
And that's
career of
gotta be, you have to that's probably weighs on their mind all the time too. Like, I'm gonna be broke and homeless, and that's it. It's done. It's over. God, couldn't
and
imagine.
and what skills do I have
Yeah,
besides wrestling? You know,
yeah. Bodyguard. That's it.
yeah, even then, I mean,
Security.
security. That's it. But then you get old, and then you realize, dude, and your joints are all messed up because of how many bumps you've taken. You could barely stand up. They're talking about Hulk Hogan, how he used to be 6'9", like back in
Yeah.
his prime. And if you watch the movie Rocky, but then again, Sylvester Stallone was like what 5'7", But if you watch him in Rocky 2, and you see how big Hulk Hogan was humongous. But I guess and it wasn't even like getting slammed. It was the stupid leg drop, running up and like jumping in the air and landing on your ass with that leg. Took such a toll on his spine that they started to take out his discs, and now he's 6'4" because
Yep.
his
Yeah.
spine's been.
You naturally shrink anyway with age, but if you're constantly jumping in the air and landing on your ass and crunching your spine, yeah, you're gonna shrink. I mean, I lost an inch. I went to the doctors. I'm usually 6 foot tall. I went to the doctors and got my height taken, and without shoes on, and I lost an inch. So that's real. You shrink
Yeah.
an age, so it's.
Yeah, I'm already short, so if I lose an inch, I disappear.
Yeah, you could just run around the farm and people will be like, "Oh, look, an elf."
Yeah, it'd be like running around. Look, he's laughing so loud. Why is he laughing? Because when he runs, the grass. Anyways,
I knew where you're going with that.
I'm not gonna finish that joke. Anyways, what we got room for one more conspiracy. Dude, it's already been an hour. How crazy is that?
Really? That was fast.
Yeah, that was very fast. All right, we got room for. You got anything for us?
The Montreal Screwjob is the last one I got.
Okay, this is good. You want to set that one up for us? For those of you that don't.
Yeah, in 1970, apparently in 1997, McMahon double-crossed Bret Hart during a match in Montreal. So, yeah. So they didn't really give too much information on it, but I know you know.
Okay, so the setup was, all right. So for those of you that don't know, Bret Hart is a legit shoot fighter. His father was an actual wrestler. He did a lot of shoot fighting, or what they call shoot wrestling or shoot grappling, which involves a lot of submissions, which involves a lot. And the reason why it's called shoot is because they're actually shooting in on you, to take your legs and dump you and all kinds of different stuff. So the Hart family, they can fight. Like, these are actual grapplers. So Bret Hart was promised a contract, or he was going to WCW, and then Vince McMahon's like, well, yeah, I'll sign this contract, whatever the hell it was. So he ends up like basically saying like, oh, we can't give you the deal. You might as well go to WCW, So Bret Hart was a loyal, like for 15 years, I guess he worked for WWE, WWF at the time. And even sick, he showed up at all the events and everything, but he was leaving because Vince McMahon like basically said, I'm not giving you the contract I promised, even though I signed it. I have lawyers I can hire much better lawyers than you. So he's like, all right, I got to go to WCW. But he wants to give up he wants to give up the belt, not that night, but next week. He says he's going to walk up and he's going to hand it over to Shawn Michaels. He's going to say, I'm retiring and I'm leaving. That was the plan. And this man's like, that sounds fantastic. That's how we're going to do it. And he probably kissed Shawn Michaels backstage when no one was looking. Anyways, so he was like, that sounds fantastic. So they decided they're going to screw Bret out of the title. It's like, he can't leave tonight without that title. What are we going to do? So they said, well, what if we have Shawn Michaels pin him and cinch up hard on a small package, which is a type of pin. And he cinches up on him, and then the ref just comes in and actually does the 1, 2, 3. And it's like, you can't do that, because the moment that Bret Hart gets free, he's gonna beat the shit out of Shawn Michaels. You know, you can't do that. So they're like, all right, this is the plan. And they told Bret Hart, they said, what we're gonna do is Shawn Michaels is gonna get you into your own move, the sharpshooter. And as soon as he puts it on you, you're gonna reverse it, and you're gonna get him on the sharpshooter, and he's gonna tap. And the end. And then you could turn in you can go in however you wanted to do it next week. You know, you could walk in. So he's like, all right, that's the plan. The end. So they walk into they start the match, and you have Bret Hart, you know, he gets put Shawn Michaels sucks so bad at certain things that Bret Hart says that when he was putting the sharpshooter, he wasn't even doing it correctly. So he says, I helped him get me into the position. So he helped him put him in his own submission. The moment that he gets put in the sharpshooter and he's getting ready to turn over and reverse it, Vince McMahon's like, ring the bell. And they ring the bell, and they make it seem like, and the whole audience saw, like, what, he didn't tap? And they rang the bell. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels grabs the belt, runs out of the ring. They take off running. They leave the arena. The referee of that night hops in a cab and just takes off. Everybody's running away. And Bret Hart spits in Vince, and this is on you guys can watch this footage. He spits in Vince McMahon's face, you know, because of what he did. So he goes into the locker room and he's getting ready to get his stuff, and he's just like, you guys deserve it, you know, you guys deserve each other. Take this title. I don't want it. I'm leaving. So he gets in the shower, and this is the Undertaker said that this is what happened. Shane McMahon said that this is what happened. The Hart family said this is what happened, because they're all in this locker room together. So Bret Hart gets in the shower, and he says, I'm going to get in the shower, and if you're still out here, by the time I get out, I'm going to knock you out. And Vince McMahon, you know, being Vince McMahon, he said he just sat there and he crossed his arms and he waited for him. So Bret Hart takes his time, he showers, he gets out, and he notices that Vince McMahon is still there. So he grabs Vince McMahon, ties him up. Vince McMahon tries to tie up with him, but of course, he's a shoot wrestler. So Bret basically like gets the underhook on the arm, and then comes in with an uppercut and catches Vince right on the chin, knocks him down, head bounces off the ground, breaks his ankle or fractures his ankle. And there's a famous footage where there's people like Triple H, and they're all waiting outside the locker room to see what happens. And all you see is just Vince McMahon walk out with this big old swollen eye, and he limps away. And that was the night of the Montreal Screwjob. That affected so many people that to this day, Shawn Michaels can't go to certain places like Vancouver because the people at the airport try to kill him. Because what he did
that is crazy. See, I didn't get that much out of it, but wow. Yeah. Ooh.
See that? Now that's a story. And
yeah, could you imagine going to a major metropolitan airport and you walk in, you're like, oh God, I hope nobody sees me. And somebody goes, there he is, and then everybody swarms you.
Yeah, it's always that one guy. He's like, there he is, get him. You know, and everybody's like, well, crowd, like you're a Coke guy in a Pepsi plant. Get him! You know, and everybody just swarms
you. Traitor! Spy!
Yeah, there he is. Yeah. Nazi! And they all just like jump on you. Jeez. And it's so great. And it's been, how long has it been? Like 30 years since that happened?
Yeah, it's been a long time. No
and
way. Oh my God, when did that happen?
That must have been like 1996 or something. I don't know. Or 1997.
97. So, yeah, almost 30 years. Jesus,
dude, we are old.
Yeah,
I'm 35, so yeah.
Well, that's it.
Yeah, I just look like I've had a hard life, and I just look like I've been dead for 4 years.
I got 10 years on you.
I got 10 years on you, Sonny. How old are you? 35? When I was your age, I was 60.
Oh, don't get me started.
But anyway, so it's been like 30 years, and then Bret Hart eventually, you know, they went on camera with Shawn Michaels, Shawn Michaels like expressed regret because he was in on it. He pretended like he wasn't in, like I didn't know, but many years later he said, I knew, I was in on it. Triple H was in on it. We all knew what was going to happen. You're so stupid that you trusted somebody's word, and Bret Hart is the only one that basically didn't know. And Mick Foley was so disgusted. He was new in the company that he decided he was going to quit. And JR had to call him on the phone and convince him to come in. So it was a big, one of the most controversial moments. Well, besides the Chris Benoit thing, that one took the cake. But it was one of the biggest moments in wrestling history because it was a double cross and it was a huge conspiracy behind it. So.
Yeah. I can understand somebody who's been loyal there that long, and they're like, okay, this is what we have, this is the plan, this is how it's going to work out, and then it doesn't. And I'd be pissed too.
Oh yeah, dude, man, I couldn't imagine because even Vince McMahon himself talks about Bret Hart and how he was always there. You had people that no-showed because they were high on pills, and Shawn Michaels was high on pills and booze at that time. He was unreliable. People hated him because he was a person that was struggling with substance abuse, and he wouldn't show up for main events sometimes. And that's another reason why that people were saying, like, dude, I think that he's sleeping with Vince McMahon, because he allowed him to get away with so much. And Bret Hart was the opposite. Bret Hart didn't drink. He didn't do pills. He didn't do any of the drugs. He had his family. He showed up when he was supposed to. He showed up early, and he ended up getting screwed in the end. So there you go.
Yep. Where's the justice?
Yeah. Where's the no justice, no peace? What's that song? Just kidding. All right, man. This was fun, dude. It has been an hour. How crazy is that, dude? This flew
by quick.
This flew by. But anyways, brother, man, thanks for coming on. You got anything you want to plug?
Not right now. I don't know. I'm still working on it.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. Well, guys, this is on Decon versus the Dark. Don't subscribe, don't like it, downvote it, report it, do whatever you want. But this is on Nightmare Road. Like and subscribe. Anyways, so there we are. So thanks, brother. Thanks for doing this with me. This was fun. I had a blast.
Yeah, this is great.
And all right. What's my old outro for my? Let's see, what is it? Okay, I remember now. Remember, guys. How is it? Oh, there we go. Remember, guys. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you. Dude, that is a good one. How do I stop the recording?